No, that's Kristin. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Broward County Black Chamber of Commerce on this special day. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. This is a time that we can reflect on his legacy, his work, all that he struggled against and was up against. And despite it all, he still fought on because he believed that a true change could and would come. I find that having his holiday right at the top of the year is very fitting because it calls on all of us to recall and reflect on his legacy, but also to think about what we're doing and what we're not doing and what we could be doing more of so that we could continue his work and ensure that his legacy is carried out. You know, making sure that his dream isn't just a dream, but that his dream is realized. I know with all that's going on in the world, as we think about everything that has happened, especially in these last 2 years, we all understand that there's still a lot of work to do. But the point is looking back on the civil rights movement and the leadership that Martin Luther King Jr. provided during that time, it gives us hope. Hope that we can, in fact, push forward and fight for and win the change that is necessary for all of us to be free, especially for African Americans in this country, for them to be free, for us to be free, live out our true dreams without any limitation. So I'm happy that you all joined today. I didn't want to let this year pass without us doing something at the chamber. And nothing seems big enough when it comes to his legacy, but I wanted to bring on some friends and some people in the community that will be familiar to you to talk about what Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy means to them, and then to talk about action. What actions are they taking? What are they involved to ensure that they continue his work, whether it be large or small? We can all have an impact. So during the program, I want you to share with us, and I'll post your comments about what Dr. King's legacy means to you. And then tell us about some of the great things that you're doing in your community to heal the racial divide, to have those difficult conversations, and to, in fact, have and further justice, whether it be with regard to the criminal justice system, economic justice, voting rights. What are you doing? Please share so that we can make sure we highlight some of what you are doing. Before we start and welcome our first guest, I did want to play a brief video that kind of highlights the shifting view and focus of Dr. King as he continued his journey in the civil rights movement. I do want to share that with you. So let me go and hit my share screen so you can see what I'm seeing. Okay, here we go.
I guess I could use some of this time to get into pleasantries and talk about
Do we have a commercial?
many experiences I've had with you not only here, but in Europe and other places. What do you have in store for us this summer?
That's a good question. Well, I don't know about the summer. I guess I should begin with what we have in store for the spring. I feel that we are in the midst of a most critical period in our nation, and the economic problem is probably the most serious problem confronting the Negro community. And I might say the most serious problem confronting poor people generally. And I don't want to be narrow about this, talking only about the black poor in our country, because I must be concerned about Puerto Ricans who are poor, Mexican Americans, American Indians, and Appalachian whites. And we are confronting a major depression in the poor community. I think the time has come to bring to bear the power of the direct action, the nonviolent direct action movement on the basic economic conditions that we face all over the country. Nonviolence has been a tremendous force in grappling with the social problem of legal segregation and the syndrome of deprivation surrounding that system. And of course, it has been a major force in grappling with the political problem of the denial of the right to vote. But in winning victories like the Civil Rights Bill of '64 and the Voting Rights Bill of 1965 around the issue of segregation and voting rights, we discovered that these legislative strides did very little to improve the lot of the millions of Negroes in the ghettos of the North and in the nation generally. In other words, it did very little to penetrate the lower depths of Negro deprivation in communities all over.
Just wanted to share that short video with you. As you heard, a lot of what Dr. King was talking about back then
about History Hit TV.
is still very relevant today, unfortunately. So anyhow, we do want to bring on our first guest as we grapple with some of the issues Dr. King talked about and work to correct. We also talk about how we're trying to advance that dream with some of our local leaders and community activists here. So my first guest up is Kristin Goth, who is the Community Services Chair for the Broward County Black Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to welcome her on our live stream. Hey, Kristin.
Hi, Shahiwa. Happy MLK Day.
Yeah, happy MLK Day to you too. I'm so happy that you could join us. I want to ask, as I'll be asking all of our guests today as they check in throughout the day, what does Dr. King's legacy mean to you?
That is a great question, and I appreciate that question. I'd have to say, as the daughter of parents who come from very humble beginnings, my father was from Georgia, my mother from North Carolina, dirt roads. They worked so hard so that their children could have the things in life that they weren't able to have growing up during the time of segregation. Being the daughter of parents who taught the importance of knowing where you came from to appreciate where you are and where you want to go and the things you want to achieve in life. And now, hopefully, I am passing that legacy on to my children, that no matter what color you are, everyone should be treated based on their character rather than the color of their skin. And I'm excited about joining this chamber. When it formed in August of 2018, you are doing amazing things in the community, and I'm just so thankful to be a part of the ride. You ensure that the Black population in Broward County are afforded the same opportunities as everyone else. You don't sit back and remain silent. You encourage the development of Black entrepreneurs, and you support and foster continued growth for Black businesses. And I'm a living witness of that, being the managing partner of my own law firm. Gosh, there's so much more I could say. But as we take the time to appreciate Dr. King as one of the founding fathers of freedom and progression for Black people and all people in this country, I want to make sure that we continue to think about the ways we can continue to accomplish his dream of equality and justice for all. For actions speak, of course, much louder than words. And speaking of action, I have to put out there the Broward County Black Chamber of Commerce's Community Service Committee. We're working hard partnering with schools such as Dillard High and Boyd Anderson, and more, to impart mentorship and volunteer opportunities from our members to the entrepreneurship students. We're always looking for more volunteers, and more members to support the cause. So for more information on how you can get involved in this excellent community service committee, please feel free to reach out to me. My direct cell is 954-695-6512, or you can send me an email, Kristin@kwglaw.net. And one last thing I wanted to mention, Shahiwa, is it's very important that we as a community stay connected to our local county leaders,
Yes.
like commissioners, mayors, et cetera, to make sure that they are held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
We thank them for their service, and
Yeah.
we're hopeful that they will continue to make strides to ensure that the needs of all races are adequately represented and addressed. The needs are addressed.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kristin, for those words, those kind words. And kind of hearkening back to, why the chamber was started, to ensure that equity in contracting and other respects that was non-existent, and we still fight for. But also thank you for your work. I'm glad you, as a chair of the Community Service Committee, you make sure that we're not only working on the current business owners, but we're also focused on economic freedom and economic creativity and innovation for our young people, our next generation, which is especially crucial because some of our children, are seen as, throwaways, or not as important, or not, as important to invest the time and money in. And so through your work, your tireless work, because I know it's not easy coordinating all of it, you make sure that we're reaching that future generation that Dr. King talked so much about, that he was striving to create a better world for. And I know the students at Dillard and Boyd Anderson will appreciate your hard work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for dropping in.
Always a pleasure.
All right. This is so wonderful. This is going to be fun because it's not just going to be me talking to you today about what I think and, about the chamber, what I feel, but we're going to be, like I said, hearing from community leaders who are active, right? Not just talking, not just, giving speeches or, platitudes, but actually doing the tough, hard work of touching and reaching our communities in impactful ways. So I'm really excited as well to welcome our second guest, Adama Ducelle. And I'm going to let her introduce herself. She has a new title, which I'm really excited about, in her new position. But beyond titles, I wanted to talk about her work, the very impactful work that she's doing. So welcome to our live stream, Adama.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here on this day, particularly. So, and I
Mhm.
just am inspired by your concept and idea of celebrating Dr. King through dialogue and conversation with folks in the community.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's good. We have to elevate each other and what we're doing. And I don't think enough people understand what, everyone is doing out there. So without further ado, I want you to introduce or say, give me your new title, because I have to say congratulations on your new position, but tell me your new title and where you work.
thank you. So, Director of Equity and Organizational Development with the Children's Services Council of Broward County. So, we are an arm of local government here, formed by referendum, and really here to help the children and families of Broward County get the most strongest and enduring programs to help everyone reach their full potential. So,
And I love it. Before we get into some of the great work you do, I want you to share with us on this special day what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy means to you.
So it really means a lot in spending the past 10 years or so looking at the different movements that brought us to where we are today. And I think it's really important that we realize and just recognize how blessed we are as people of color to have made so many gains coming as far as we have with, being slaves in this country and our legacy in America, at least starting with slavery to where we are in this present day. We have, Black and, many people of color that are millionaires, that are leading legacies of different kinds, economic advances, science advances, technological advances. And I think without people like Dr. King, like Malcolm
Mhm.
X, like Stokely Carmichael, Fred Hamptons, and the Bobby Seals, we never would have gotten where we are. So to know that those leaders really put their lives on the line, I
Mhm.
mean, up to today, knowing that anything that you do would be risking life of yourself, putting your family's lives at harm and at risk. And to be able to know that consciously and still feel that it's important enough to fight for your people
Yeah.
is huge. So I think just it's humbling to know the sacrifices that all of those men and women of the movement made to afford us the opportunities that we have today.
Exactly. I also want to now talk a bit about your very important work. I think we met initially when you were doing the racial equity training. So if you can speak about that, and then I know you want to talk about one of Dr. King's books or a book about Dr. King that you've been reading. So if you can talk about that crucial racial equity work, because I think um, it's at the crux of us really moving past a lot of the issues that Dr. King talked about that we're still kind of stuck in the mud really with current day. So go ahead and please share that with us, Adama.
Sure. So to kind of summarize it, I got really lucky when I joined the council. I came on to head our training department, and
Mhm.
through that opportunity, was connected with some partners locally here. There's been some great work that has actually come out of our institution in terms of local trainings and local workshops. But I also got to work with the folks from the Racial Equity Institute out of North Carolina
Yeah.
and put on to their 2-day racial equity workshop as well as their groundwater presentation. So, that started to kind of deepen my understanding in different ways. I'd always been a study of the Black experience being a Caribbean American. It's been important for me to ground myself in the history of this country, to know the legacy and to understand all the groundwork that was laid for me to be able to be here and to be a professional and to live my life and to raise my family here. So, but I think through that workshop, I really got a new understanding of the dynamics of race and racism and how racism has, really played a part in making things very difficult for people of color in terms of disparities and put it blank out oppression, violence, and the way also that folks have been hopeful and pushed against it and the resistance and moving past the trauma and still being resilient and being able to make change. So just got very fortunate, and it's just been something that is, I mean, to say a passion is an understatement. It really has shaped who I am today as a person and a professional.
And I mean, for those of you who don't know, I mean, this training, like Adama mentioned, is 2 days, but I was able to watch a bit of it because I saw that these women also came to the Broward County Commission and
Yes.
did a shorter version of it. And I watched the video. And although, even as you're saying, you want to make sure that you're learned, you're studying, you understand the true history, the country, because you have to understand where you've been to know where you're going. And although you still know there's discrimination, some of the statistics, some of the details that they talked about in the design of cities and how, our, Black areas specifically weren't designed with parks and pools and other things, were specifically deprived. They talked about employment, the criminal justice, just the depth and breadth of understanding how ingrained discrimination and racism was in our society, I think is crucial, because it helps you understand exactly what Dr. King was up against.
Yeah.
So I
And-
want you to go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and also, as you alluded to, the fact that it is ingrained in our systems and institutions is not just on an individual one-on-one encounter basis. It's
Yeah.
really ingrained in the laws and the policies and the practices, and that's what to present day makes it so hard to overcome.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the book you're reading, and then I do kind of want to talk about the RFP you all put out to really address trauma and other things in our neighborhoods, to kind of further healing. Go ahead.
So yeah, when you call me, it really sparked a moment, because I had this book. So where do we go from here? It's a book that Dr. King released. It was released a year before his assassination, and it gave me pause, because it made me think about all of the things that he had done to kind of put this piece together, right? The fact that he needed to take time for reflection and to remove himself from the movement, which was really hard. I mean, when you are the pivotal leader of a civil rights movement that is making so much change in a country, to go away for the period of time that he did, and to go to Jamaica to spend time, to look at the strategies, to see where he was and where the movement was at the present day, and how he could continue to be the type of leader that could help move it forward. So, that reflection on, where am I and what can I do? And then also, even in the face of extreme violence, to keep people hopeful, and to have them remain hopeful. Again, when you look at some of the movements that we talked about earlier, with Malcolm X and the, American Muslim movement, and Stokely and the Black nationalism, as well as looking at Bobby Seale, and also Fred and the Black Panther movement, there were very distinct differences between the way that they all approached it. And I mean, for me, when I have studied and reflected and looked at what it took for people to lead that level of nonviolent movement that Dr. King did, the training, they actually held freedom schools, where you would go there for months at a time and actually, be put through scenarios of people putting out cigarettes and screaming in your face and pushed. And so it was a lot of training and practice and honing the ability to be, to practice this nonviolent reaction to these, extreme, acts of oppression from people time after time. So when you said it, it made me really reflect and say, for me, as I move further into where I am within the current movement and currently trying to move us forward as people of color, looking at where he was mentally and allowing myself to have time to do that reflection and be my best self to move forward. Unfortunately, he was cut down way too early after, but I think the book serves definitely as a legacy, right? For all of us to say, we can take from his example to kind of have that self-fortitude. And most importantly, I think today, in light of COVID, is that time for self-care and reflection.
No, I love that, Adama. And it is that reflection. And, people talk about hope and, what is hope? But when you're faced with some of the daunting and, obstacles and the violence, I mean, they faced violence. People were killed, beaten, jailed, etc., just fighting for, voting rights, fighting to be human beings, fighting to be able to have a business and not get burnt down because it's a Black business, so that's critical. We need that hope, because sometimes you do get tired. I can attest to that. And sometimes you do get tired. And with that being said, lastly, I just want you to address the fact that you all had issued an RFP around healing, because there's trauma in all of this. And we cannot look away from that. I just want to share something briefly that I read in a local newspaper. And I started hearing commercials on the radio about the fact that the suicide rates are going up. And they're going up for the first time in a long time. They're significantly higher in the Black community. And so I think people think of these things in a vacuum where it's, as the hate, and there's also an increase in hate crimes, et cetera, against Black people. Um, you look at that in a vacuum, like, oh, that's happening over there. But it does have a mental health, those types of effects. So if you can talk about briefly the RFP that you all issued to kind of address that in our community.
Sure, and I'll give it context for those of you watching that really don't know. So, in light of the horrible tragedy, and I know the anniversary of the fatal shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas is soon coming for us locally. The Children's Services Council started working with members and partners in our communities, youth, parents, community leaders, folks, the business leaders and entrepreneurs, such as yourself, to really hone in on what the historical impact of trauma has been, specifically in communities of color here in Broward County, and what are the things that folks are doing to help stay resilient, right? To help just do what you have to do every day: get up, go to work, take care of your family, take care of yourself, and be functional parts of the members of the community. So through those conversations, we found a multitude of things. We were very lucky to have the help of Dr. Sarisi West Olatunji, who helped us facilitate 6 or 7 of those conversations, and then produced a really clear report for us with several different findings. And what we gleaned from those findings was that the community felt that they needed to be more connected, right? Connected to one another, but even more importantly, connected to the resources in their communities that would help them overcome these historic traumas and present day traumas. So from there, our program services department, along with some of our partners, work to develop the Healing All Living with Trauma grant, our HEAL initiative. We are funding community mental health workers to be present in those communities that we've been partnering with, to just connect folks to resources. But I think the piece that will be kind of pivotal and changing for us with those community health workers is that they'll also serve as a additional connection for the Children's Services Council and our partners to the community, where we can continue to have this feedback loop of this is what's going on, these are the needs, so that we can be able to we're now approaching our 20th year, and I'm proud to say we really have been one of those organizations that have been responsive to things in real time in our community. So I think this will deepen our ability to be able to do that even more, and our connection with working with the community to help bring about the change that we want.
And I love that. And I love the fact that you reached out and wanted to make sure that the people, the nonprofits and the entrepreneurs that participated and were going to provide the services in the Black community actually look like the community, which is critical for, that service point and that trust factor in our community. So I want to say thank you so much, Adama, for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Good to
having
hear
me.
about your the racial equity work and all the other work that you're doing. Can you just, briefly give your contact information, just so people can contact you if they want to find out more about that work?
Sure, no problem. They can use my first initial A, last name Ducelle, at cscbroward.org. So A Ducelle at cscbroward.org.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'll see you
Take
soon.
care.
All right. Thank you all for sticking with us. Some heavy information that we got so far as we continue to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Obviously, the work is plenty. It's not easy, but if we're working together to push and bring about that change, then it will come. We have to include everybody. This is not just a heavy lift in the African-American community, but we have to have allies. And I love the fact that Kristin earlier brought up the fact that we need our elected officials to understand the importance of equity, equality, of making sure that everyone is treated with that respect, but then they also are getting the services that they need, that there is equal access to resources. So we do have a couple elected officials that will be coming on and joining us today to talk more about their work. So up next is my guest, who is currently the vice mayor in the city of Tamarack, Mike Gellin.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good, good. I know you're in Tallahassee. They're advocating for the city, but I'm glad that you were able to drop in and join us today.
Yes, most certainly.
Okay,
Always
good.
at service.
Nice. I'm going to start out with the same question I'm asking all of my guests today on this very special occasion as we celebrate the legacy of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. What does his legacy mean to you, Mike?
His legacy means everything to me. It means I must give maximum effort. I must represent something more than myself.
Mhm.
I must sacrifice for my family and for my community, which is what Dr. King did. He made the ultimate sacrifice. He knew that he was a dead man walking, and he was okay with that. He was comfortable with that because he knew he worked for a higher power, and he knew that he was working for the benefit of his people, largely African Americans who were suffering, who were being disenfranchised, who did not have economic opportunity, who did not get fair wages or great jobs, who were not treated with basic respect. So it's it means that I have to carry that legacy on of fighting for the same causes that unfortunately still exist today.
No, you're right. It is unfortunate, but and it is a huge um I think legacy that we have to take on. And I want to understand, in what ways are you making sure or ensuring that you continue his work, that you continue to impact the community in ways like Martin did.
Yeah. So two things that I try to focus on that Martin Luther King also openly spoke about, but you don't hear about it, is one, police brutality against African Americans, and two, creating economic opportunities, which leads to less crime in the Black community. And so one of the things that I've done as a commissioner in the city of Tamarack and as vice mayor is push the effort to pass small business programs and to really look at the discrimination within the city of Tamarack. And I got the commission to approve conducting a disparity study, which means a third-party vendor will come in and analyze the vendors that we work with. And I know, because I did the research, that less than 1% of the money that we spend goes to Black businesses. A low percentage goes to Hispanic businesses, a low percentage goes to women-owned businesses. And when you have a county and a county that's about 33% Black and a city that's about 30% Black, yet the contractors, the money that we spend, the public tax dollars that we spend, only 1% goes to the African American community, then it's no surprise that when we get our monthly crime reports from BSO, the majority of the people on that report are the descendants of slaves, right? The African American community. And so if we don't change the economic opportunities and the educational opportunities for African Americans, and that trend is going to continue. And Martin Luther King spoke about that and fought for that while he lived. Police brutality, we have a great captain right now in the city of Tamarack. He's changing the culture, but we have had some issues in the city of Tamarack that I had to address head on, that I'll continue to address head on, and really strive to work with our local captain and Broward Sheriff's Office to make sure we have better community policing, and that the police officers react the same way they would react in dealing with another community. They react that way when they deal with our community. Instead of taking things to a higher level, let's bring the temperature down and handle things in a way that is going to lower the temperature and have an amiable solution that does not lead to an arrest, which will cause someone to have a life of crime because they have a stain on their record. So those are just a couple of ways. Obviously I push for a stronger education. I try to promote a good, healthy lifestyle. These are things that Dr. King all talked about. And I try to promote that in my life every day and as an elected official. For some reason, I'm not hearing you.
Thank you for joining us. And I will say this, as we talked about earlier at the top of the show, the very huge focus the chamber has on ensuring equity in contracting. And we talked about how, as Dr. King continued to work, how his message really honed in, and we played a video earlier as well, how his message really honed in on the economic ball and chain that was holding us down because of the lack of opportunity, the lack of, jobs, steady jobs, being the, hired and then the first to go, and that creating that instability. We also talked about, being able to have our businesses and be free to have our businesses and let them grow without the threat of violence, and then being burnt down, like it happened in so many towns and cities around the country. So that fight for equitable spending by the government is critical, because government is the largest spender. So if a third of our population is locked out of that spending, then we're really hampering the progress and economic opportunities for our communities. It's all about economic justice in multiple ways. So I thank you for joining us here today, even through your travels, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor, for joining us. Thank you. All right, we have we have two more guests before we wrap up today. I'm happy to welcome the current president of the TJ Ruddick Bar Association. I think it's important to understand the role that lawyers have played in making sure that Black people in this country had their rights respected as well as advanced. And so I want to welcome Deanne Jackson Esquire to the show. And I see you're a lady on the move today. What's going on, Deanne?
Hi, Shahiwa. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm actually in Atlanta, and I felt like the background is perfect. I'm about to go into the Civil Rights Museum.
Nice.
So I figured that would be a nice backdrop for our conversation today.
No, perfect. And thank you for joining us. I want you to tell us just a little bit about the history of the TJ Ruddick Bar Association, kind of why it was founded, which harkens back once again to all the things that Dr. King was fighting against back. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So the TJ Ruddick Bar Association was founded in November of 1982. So this year is a really important year for us because we'll be celebrating 40 years.
Wow.
We were founded because at the time our founding members felt that Black attorneys were just not being afforded equal opportunities to be able to have a seat on the bench as members of the judiciary. We were not becoming partners in law firms or even able to just get jobs at some of the major law firms. So the TJ Ruddick Bar Association was founded to combat some of these issues. And we continue to fight for those issues today. We continue to work to ensure that we have Black attorneys having a seat at the table. We are continuing to work, as you know, for diversity on the bench in Broward County. Our judicial bench does not reflect our community. Our previous guests talked about a population in Broward County. I'm not sure about the numbers, of approximately 30%, but we definitely don't have a 30% Black judiciary. So those are kind of the things that we are working on. I'm not sure if you're aware, I know you're a lawyer as well, but only 5% of attorneys in the United States are Black, which is kind of sad. So another thing that we're doing is we award scholarships to law students to help them through law school, help them during the bar exam, because it's so important, to be able to do this work in the community, that you pass the bar and be able to, have a seat at the table and be part of the conversation.
No, I thank you for that, Deanne. I wanted to get your take, since you're there in Atlanta, about to go into MLK Museum. What does Dr. King's legacy mean to you personally?
Personally, Dr. King's legacy means that, we're able to continue his dream, to be able to sit with our white colleagues and counterparts and be able to be equal to them. We be able to show up as our authentic selves and know that we're enough, and we can do the work. So that's what that means to me. And I definitely think we wouldn't be where we are without the work of Dr. King. And it's just an honor, for the TGI Bar Association, for our work to align with his vision and for us to continue the legacy.
I love that. I do want to ask about, I know you all have a hotline, or that you all do, you have volunteers that you take legal questions and kind of provide some guidance. I know you all have done that in the past. Is that something you all are continuing to do as a part of your community service to the Broward community?
Yes. So in the past, we've partnered with Legal Aid of Broward County during the month of May to serve on their legal hotline. And I anticipate that we'll continue that relationship.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you for being here. I won't hold you back from your your sightseeing and really soaking in all of Dr. King's legacy, because it's plastered all over Atlanta. So be safe, and thank you for dropping in with us today. Thank you, Deanne.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. All right. Hopefully you all are enjoying the program today. I just really didn't want to let this year go by without the Chamber doing something special and specific for Dr. King, and not just, listening to speeches or having a breakfast, but really talking to everyday people who are working in our community to ensure that his legacy is kept alive and his dream is realized. And you better believe it takes a lot of work. And our next guest and last guest, who's going to close out the show, knows all too well about the hard work it takes to ensure that Black people are being treated fairly and equitably, not only with regard to small businesses, but health-wise, education-wise, etc. So I'm good. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome Broward County Commissioner and our former mayor during the height of the coronavirus pandemic, Dale V.C. Holness. Welcome. Oh, unmute. Let me unmute you. Okay, perfect. All right.
Thank you so much for having me, Madam President. It's great to join in celebrating the life and legacy of such a great man that transformed the world. And that's what his legacy means to me. His legacy means that we can change the world.
Yeah.
And every person can make a contribution. Every one of us can lead in our own way, and he led, giving it all, including his life. And he was fearless. He wasn't afraid, though he knew that he could have been killed, and he was killed for doing the work. He still was relentless in his effort. And we must all make a continuing effort to build on the legacy that he left us. And on a personal note for me, his legacy means that I, a Black immigrant child, was able to become the mayor of Broward County, 1.9 million people, almost 2 million people, with this past year's budget, $6.7 billion, that I could play a leadership role.
Right.
That's his legacy. I am his legacy. That he was able to put me in the place that I am in. Maybe not as direct as people would think, but certainly, were it not for him, we wouldn't be where we are today as a people, as a nation, and as a world. He changed the consciousness of the entire world. The entire world changed. You travel the world, and he's still quoted. His language is still utilized to bring about equity, fairness, justice for all people across the globe. That's the power that Martin Luther King has. And we should never, ever not celebrate his life. We must do it continuously and constantly, and work on improving his legacy for all of us. So, Broward County, 30% Black, another 31% Hispanic. Total population of almost 2 million people, 65% of them are people of color.
Right.
65%. We have come a long way, but there's still a lot of distance for us to go to get to the promised land, to get to that dream that Martin Luther King had, that we would be judged by our character and not by the color of our skin. We still are not there yet in Broward County. Because let me give you a couple of statistics here. If we look at the income level for blacks in Broward County, you'll still find that we're way behind the rest of the population. We are at about $42,000 per year in income. Last time I looked, compared to Hispanic at $64,000. This is per household average.
Right.
Our medium household, $42,000 for black, $54,000 for Hispanics, $74,000 for whites. When we look at the criminal justice system, we find that in the state of Florida, blacks make up 17% of the population, yet we're 47% of the people in prison in the state of Florida. When you look at the unemployment rate, black unemployment rate, no matter when and how, across this country is more than double the rest of the population. Poverty rate far exceeds every other group. We still have a lot of journey to go to get to reach the dream of Martin Luther King. And I want folks to remember that he had pivoted, not just merely from civil rights, but towards equity, towards income equality and income parity. He died fighting for those workers, sanitation workers, to get equal pay. That was it. And there was a plan for the Poor People's Campaign to bring all people who were of low income to Washington, to let Washington, D.C. and the world knows that we must create greater access and opportunity and equity for every person. And that's how we lift up everyone else. Part of what I did in this past year was to put together the Racial Equity Task Force for Broward County, 37 different organizations, police, Broward College, the school board, religious groups, civil rights groups like NAACP, Urban League, the chambers of major chambers of commerce. Black Chamber of Commerce have a seat at the table. The major Chamber of Commerce have one. The Broward Alliance, the Broward Workshop, large business group, bringing 37 different entities across the county together to look at how we dismantle systemic racism, which exists in our community. The county now have an Office of Equity and community investment. That's a huge step forward where we're working to dismantle systemic racism, because it does exist. Based on the statistics that I gave you, it's there. Some people might not want to look at it and acknowledge it, but it's there. My dear sister, president of the TJ Reddick Bar, spoke to the fact that we need more black judges. That's how we change the criminal justice system. In the state of Florida, research that was done by the Tampa Bay Tribune showed that if you're black and you went before a white judge, you're going to receive a minimum of 20% higher sentence than if you're white for the same crime, removing every variable. There's something very wrong with that. Black judges make up 7% of the judges in the state of Florida. In Broward County, we have 11 of 92. We need to change that. We all must get together to ensure, whether you're black or white, to understand this, that when you lift and strengthen those who are left behind and those who have been left out, and you allow them to live the most productive life that they can live, and we grow our economy, all of us benefit. And this city financial study released in September 2020 showed that because of systemic racism within our country, a great nation lost $16 trillion in gross domestic product. $16 trillion, a lot of money. But he says, if we were to fix it, this is good news, we could grow it in the next 5 years by $5 trillion. Every person in America would benefit from that. And we must understand that all of us benefit when we strengthen those who are the weakest amongst us. And those, when we have fairness, justice, and equity for all, the entire community benefit, the entire state, nation benefit as a result of that. So what should we do? We must understand that all of us has a responsibility to help build and strengthen our community and our nation. First, you got to vote. Change policies to put people like Mike Gellan in place, someone that I've worked with very closely on many of the issues that we face in our community. Your vote is important, and you have to pay attention to who you're voting for. What has their performance been? What is their actual plan that can be implemented going forward to help our community? This is how we'll help to elect more Black judges, where we can have a more fair system. And certainly we can do that in Broward County with the amount of people that we have in Broward, almost a third of the population being Black. Now, look at how government spend its money, because it's your money also. Every city, every county, every state across the nation, how are they spending your dollars? When I got to Broward County in 2010, after the big companies sued the county for having a race and gender program to help bring women and minorities into the procurement process, and they had to get rid of it, there was a disparity study done that showed that Blacks and women were not getting a fair share, and other minority groups, of the contract. But because of the lawsuit, we couldn't continue to put a remedy in place without having a disparity study. That disparity study was not done the way it should have been done, I believe. The data wasn't there. They didn't collect it previously. It's been a struggle to do that. But I went about trying to change it with your partnership and with your help, so many across the county, to put in place efforts to change the system. We went from 10.25% procurement for our county business and enterprise, where we put our small minority women-owned business in, to 44% this past year. $136 million in contract, and there's still a lot more room for improvement. If we represent 65% of the population as minorities, then for fairness and equity, we should be getting 65% of the money being spent, and that's not the case at all. We must work to get towards that. I think we can do that. I've also, this past my last meeting, put forward again an agenda item to have a disparity study done so we can actually put the remedies in place that's needed. We didn't get it passed, but from the previous attempt that I made and this attempt, the data is now being collected, and the county administration is putting effort forward to ensure that we get the data and we continue our efforts to be more inclusive, to ensure we're spending more. When you look at our criminal justice system, we need reform there. One of the most startling things for me was early last year, I found out that 47% of the people who are in jail in Broward County are on some psychotropic drugs. They have mental illness.
Yeah.
Yet we don't have adequate support for that. We got $1.5 million in the budget last year to provide supportive housing for those who are mentally ill. Because what we find is if someone is mentally ill and they take their drugs and their medicine and they're given some support, they can be productive. You won't even know that they're mentally ill. And they wouldn't be overrunning our jail where we put all that money in. And if we can reduce the jail population, we can take more money and invest in programs and systems that help to build and strengthen the community, rather than a destructive one that really take people's productivity away from them. Our addiction and recovery center, Broward Addiction Recovery Center, needs more beds. We should be able at any time when someone have an addiction problem, be able to get them help. And that's not the case. Where we get them, we put them in jail.
Right.
At $161 per night. It's a waste of taxpayers' dollars. We can better invest it. And when the young people say defund the police, that's one of the things they're talking about. Change where we put the money.
Right.
Direct it somewhere else. And yeah, we're going to need policing, no doubt, because we need to maintain a civil society. But we can invest differently and get different outcomes. For those who are in business that are on the line, you should join the Broward Black Chamber of Commerce. And Shahira will help guide you through the process to get to where you can join the procurement process at the county, at the school board, at the hospital district, at Broward College. We've got allies in many of those places now that we've built that are understanding of what needs to be done and are making the efforts to do it. Still, certainly we need more. You look at the school board, by the way, And sadly, as of now, we won't have one person of color on that school board. Of 9. And the population, by the way, Shahira, 80% of the kids in school are black and brown.
Yep.
And we have no person of color sitting on that school board that understands the dynamics and the needs that exist within the communities, that that have the lived experience. They may say they understand it, but if you don't have the lived experience, really, you may say you understand, but have you lived it? Do you understand it enough to say, I've been there?
Right.
So we need to work on that also. And certainly as one who missed this past election by 5 votes, I got to tell you, every vote counts. Don't ever think that your vote doesn't count. Every single one counts. So stand up, get registered to vote, get a vote by mail ballot so you can see that vote early enough to make a good determination. Send out a support to your neighbors and friends. Get them out to vote. Don't just go by yourself. Bring others with you as you go out. And if you get a vote by mail ballot, please, for God's sake, turn it in early. Don't wait until last week to do it. You know, as you get, you sit on it. Listen, it goes off 30 days before the election date. At minimum, 30 days is required for it to get in the mailbox to you. And you get it, you sit there, and guess what, Shay? Some people still have it in their house.
I know. Oh my God.
You know, sadly, that's not what Martin Luther King went to his grave for. Come on, folks. That's a simple, easy thing for you to do. It doesn't cost you any money at all. Okay? So that's a major thing that, and yeah, you might not know exactly who to vote for, but let me tell you this. People who are running for office look at who votes. And even if you didn't make the right vote, they know you voted. And they know that this segment, this group is going to vote, so therefore we must pay attention to them.
Very true. Okay?
So that's a huge piece of what you need to do. And I started on telling folks to join the Chamber of Commerce, but you can also go to broward.org/econ-dev to register your business as CBE. And Shahira will help you with whatever support she needs after that through the Black Chamber of Commerce, which I'm proud to say I'm a founding member of. I think your second meeting was held in the same place I'm sitting here in my real estate office.
Yeah. when I did my tour before we launched. Yeah, it was very nice.
So there's still a lot of work for us to do. Certainly, when you look at our health system, we need to make sure there's more access for health care, especially mental health for the community. That's something that we ought to be advocating more for, and have been supportive of many institutions, one in particular, the Broward Community Family Health Centers. Broward Community and Family Health Centers is tremendous work they do to help with providing health care for those who can't afford it, who has no access. Even if you're undocumented, they're able to help you with that also.
Very nice.
The Civil Citation Program for youths, another big program that I've pushed for, where we have a 90% success rate. And you ought to ensure that whatever cities you're in, the police, find out from them. How is it being utilized by your police department?
Yeah.
Because here is Civil Citation Program that keep kids from going to jail for minor misdemeanor offenses. We're not talking about violent offenses. We're not talking about sexual offenses. We're talking about minor misdemeanor offenses, such as maybe having an open container of alcohol, loitering, shoplifting, where it's a small amount of funds.
Trespassing.
Why are we putting them in jail? Trespassing. Why are we putting them in jail for that?
Yeah.
We have a 90+% success rate of completion by those who enter the program, and a less than 3% recidivism rate. That means less than 3% of those who go through this program end up back in the system. We're saving millions and millions of dollars in taxpayers' dollars, and ensuring that we create a more productive life to where someone can now, without having a record, if they complete the program, can join the army, can go to college, can get a job, can find a place to live when they get out, and they don't have that misdemeanor offense tainting them for the rest of their life.
I won't have a problem getting a SBA loan. We had some issues if you have a certain level of, offense as an entrepreneur and employing people, then you weren't able to get portions of the PPP. That was an issue. So.
And you gotta talk to your police department through your cities about how are they policing. Are they using the civil citation program? Many are not using it, Shahir, which is no good at all. And I also forward that for adults for the same minor misdemeanor offenses. And most cities are not using it at all. Okay? Most cities are not utilizing it. And let me give you another statistic why so many black folks are in jail. In Broward County, I'm almost twice as likely to be stopped for not wearing a seatbelt as someone who's white.
Right.
Seatbelt, twice as likely, 1.9 times according to ACLU statistics. In Palm Beach, it's 2.8 times more likely. That's really serious. So if you're over policing a certain group of people, what do you think you're going to find? Somebody going to have a little weed. Okay? Somebody going to have a little infraction here and there, and then it gets worse for them, and we pay for it in the long run because it's our dollars that's going to do to take care of these things. So we've come a long way, a mighty long way, I would say. We still have a long distance to go to ensure that we're investing funds in the right place, in early childhood education, in daycare for parents so that they can have a good place for their kids to go. And not looking at third grade performance to determine how many prison cells we should be building, but how much more money we ought to be investing in.
Exactly.
Reverse it. That's how you change it. So that's a big issue for us going forward. Certainly we have to make sure that college and technical training programs are more attainable for people so that they can be more productive. We are competing globally. It's not just here. We look at the world. What are they doing to ensure prosperity for their people and that they have a good quality of life? And you look at Scandinavian countries, and you'll find that their quality of life is superior to whites in America.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some, I think, important reminders for our audience. One, with regard to Dr. King's legacy, we tend to focus on what's going on here nationally, but it really is a global. Dr. King's legacy is global, touched the African continent, China, the Asian continent. I mean, all over. You're correct. When people protest, when they're standing up for their rights, if they feel they're being oppressed, they're chanting Dr. King's words in China and Russia, all over the world. So I love that reminder that you brought to us today. So thank you so much for joining us as you closed out the show as we expected you to do, making sure that you hit on all the nuggets, on all the aspects in society that we have come a long way, yet we still have some ways to go. And there's a part for all of us to play. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Holness.
And thank you so much. And we must love each other.
Yes.
He loved even those who were oppressing. He showed empathy and love for them.
He did.
We must do it for all of us.
He did.
Because it's a powerful thing, love is.
It is. Thank you. And I'll see you soon. Well, I'd like to thank all of my guests for coming on today. This was a wonderful way to remember and commemorate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, and not only look at all that he has done, but reflect on what we need to do, what is still left to do. I also want to point out a couple of other good tidbits that Commissioner Dale Holness left us with. Besides, obviously, recognizing that Dr. King's legacy is global, we also have to think about the many ways that we individually can make a difference. In the earlier clip that we played, the video with Dr. King, he talked about the Voting Rights Act. Are you honoring that legacy? Are you voting? We remind our members and the community in general that voting is critical. We have an advocacy committee, and we look at the policies of the county and citywide and the state to see if our elected officials are doing what is important and equitable for our community. You must vote, right? You also have to look at how the money is being spent. Thank you for that reminder, Commissioner Holness. That money's ours. We pay taxes. And as residents, as business owners, and voters, we have to ensure that the money is being spent equitably. right? That it's not just going to one part of the county or in one community, but our businesses are able to procure and do business with the county, and therefore they can turn around and hire people in our communities to combat the higher unemployment rate than we have. So thank you for those reminders. Yes, there is lots of work to do as we celebrate and look to the life and legacy of Dr. King. I love the reminder also, so we don't stay negative, that we have come a long way. There are things that I wouldn't be able to do, places that I wouldn't be able to go in society if Dr. King and many others did not sacrifice and ultimately give their life, unfortunately, paying the highest sacrifice that there is for our common good. And so let's not let his legacy be in vain. Let us push, let us work, and let us never let up. Because as one of my favorite sayings Dr. King has is, the time is always right to do what's right. And don't let anybody let you think differently. I do want to end today's program with another video highlighting Dr. King's words from his last speech before he was assassinated. I think this video reminds us all that we have to be fearless because our work is greater than ourselves. And that no matter who we are up against or what we're up against, that right is right and it shall prevail. Because as Dr. King said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So I'm going to share this last video with you.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
I just wanted to share that some of Dr. King's last words, the words that should leave an indelible impression in your mind. Don't fear anyone. When you're doing right, you must press forward and do it anyway. I do want to say thank you for joining us. I see also our sister chamber up in Palm Beach has joined us today. Happy MLK Day to you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining our forum. I appreciate you sharing this day with us. And we will definitely make this an annual thing, because we don't want to let this important holiday slip by without truly commemorating what Dr. King meant to us in our community, in our nation, and in our world, and in recommitting ourselves to the struggle and the fight ourselves, because it is not over. Thank you to all my guests for coming through today. I appreciate you, Kristin Goth, Adama Ducelle, Vice Mayor Mike Gellin, Deanne Jackson, my TJ Rudder Bar Association president, and our COBOL Coalition member, and of course, the incomparable former Broward County Mayor and Broward County Commissioner Dale V.C. Holness. We appreciate your hard work and your continued fight for Black businesses. And I know, although you're no longer in office, you will continue to fight, and we look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.